and suddenly everyone was heading towards England. Or so Clive James writes at the end of his autobiography, Unreliable Memoirs. The departure was late 1961, and for England, read London. And really there was no suddenly about it. Many people, many journalists, writers even, had been doing it for a long time. The problem for an expatriate Australian was coming home.
What happens is you get stuck. Then later on, the element of fear of going back enters, because you're a bit afraid of finding that the country you left has left you behind, which is in fact what happened to me. When I came back for a flying visit after about 15 years, I got full-scale culture shock as I entered a Sydney that was 20 times higher than when I left it. Everybody had obviously got on very well without me. Several million people had had a whale of a time without noticing I was gone. I felt offended.
Well, this time we're surely noticing he's back. By way of genuflection, the Women's Weekly has called him a real superstar, the Bulletin a true media personality. And these tags should sit nicely on a man who writes in his autobiography, I was born in 1939. The other big event of that year was the outbreak of the Second World War. But Clive James will make fun of himself with as much enthusiasm as he once destroyed television programs for the Observer newspaper in London.
Well, I never perceived it the way most TV critics did. I didn't really think I could change policy. And I think criticism that's written in order to change the program controller's mind and make him stop doing one kind of program and start doing another is probably a waste of time, because program controllers don't respond to that kind of pressure. They respond to other kinds of pressure. They respond to ratings. They respond to their own ideas, their ideas of the workers surrounding them. I think what the TV critic can do is share with his audience, the people who read him, a certain kind of recognition of what they're both interested in.
Well, now, of course, you're in front of the camera and subject to the very criticism that you used to make.
And I've been getting it. A lot of guys have been lying up in the scrub for many years, waiting for me to come by.
On the morning talk show, Clive James is mostly funny. He wants to be heavy so early.
2, 1, recording.
Right up, and cue him.
The battle over tobacco advertising is...
But on the matter of television criticism, there are times when he can be serious, especially when it comes to the local variety.
I think that probably the way that Australian communications are built up so that newspaper groups virtually own TV stations is probably not the best possible way of having objective television criticism or criticism of high quality. I think anyone who starts telling too much of the truth is liable to be moved on to another part of the newspaper.
So how do you get around that?
I have no idea. Public corporations or trust busting. I mean, in many ways, Australia needs trust busting laws.
Right the back.
As the caption says...
This is criticism of a different kind. Clive James is in Perth as guest of the Association for the Study of Australian Literature. He's in the company of the country's literary folk. Today, Clive James says he's getting used to Australia's new directions, like towards wine instead of beer. But he's not sure that the much-scorned cultural cringe hasn't turned into a cultural cockiness. And it's from his position of citizen of London, an obvious Anglophile, that he has these cautions.
I think it's very, very questionable whether things like the ties with Britain should be cut. And you've got to take on the responsibility of full-scale republicanism if you do that. I suppose I'm in favour of the monarchy because there's a lot of things you could say about that you can't say about Bob Hawke.
Like what?
Well, Bob Hawke hasn't got a son with big ears who's going to marry a beautiful girl in Scotland. So none of this is going to happen. And it's, for my kind of writer, that's a limitation. Now, you might say this is frivolity, but frivolity is a part of life. And I'm not even sure it's all that frivolous.
What are you going to say about him?
Well, I'll just try and point out there's a guy called Robert Darrett.
So as Clive James plays expatriate cavalier to this country's roundheads, wherever you stand on these matters, remember this is a man of integrity. I mean, who among us could claim this?
I take pride in never having done an advertisement. I never have. And nowadays I get offered the opportunity to say that I can't tell stalk from butter for an enormous amount of money. But I've got my reflexes trained so that I say no instead of yes.